There is a specific kind of silence that has nothing to do with sound. You are in a room full of people, loud, laughing, leaning into each other with the casual ease of people who find this effortless. And you are there too, saying the right words, nodding at the right intervals, performing the correct version of present, but something underneath it is not transmitting. Not shy, not broken, just buffering. Sending a signal into a network that returns nothing but static. Now, most people who feel this spend years treating it as a personal failure. They read books on charisma. They perform warmth until the performance becomes indistinguishable from the real thing. And still, the static remains. What if the signal was never broken? What if the network simply was not built to receive it? The human brain does not connect through conversation. It connects through electricity. In 2010, neuroscientists at Princeton published research in PNAS, documenting something that should have rewritten how we talk about human connection. Using fMRI imaging, they demonstrated that during genuine social bonding, the brains of two people begin to synchronize. Gamma waves, theta waves, neural oscillations firing in measurable rhythmic alignment across two separate skulls. The process is called neural oscillatory coupling. It is not a metaphor. It is electrochemical. It is either happening or it is not happening. And when it is not happening, no volume of social effort manufactures a substitute. Connection is not a choice. It is a frequency match. The experience you call clicking with someone is your nervous system detecting a real oscillatory alignment. The experience you call nothing to talk about is your nervous system reporting that no coupling is occurring, regardless of how much language is being exchanged. Hermann Hesse understood this 50 years before the neuroscience existed to prove it. In Demian, Emile Sinclair stands at the threshold of two worlds. The bright, predictable world his family lives in, and another world beneath it, darker, more real, operating on laws the bright world refuses to acknowledge. Sinclair's entire adolescence is one long attempt to translate himself, to compress his actual signal into a format the network around him can process. And every translation costs him something he cannot name but can feel. That cost has a name now. When a high-coherence brain enters a low-frequency social environment, the group responds in a way that feels personal but is entirely biological. See, interpersonal neurobiologist Daniel Siegel's research on neural integration documents that social environments either support or suppress the brain's internal coherence depending on whether they are neurologically compatible with the individual's existing architecture. When they are not compatible, the surrounding nervous systems do something specific. They push back, not with malice, with biology. So the group detects a frequency deviation and executes its default function, attempting to regulate the outlier back into the mean. This is called neural homeostatic pressure, and it is the scientific name for something you have lived through repeatedly and blamed on yourself. The pressure to be simpler, to want less, to stop asking the questions you ask. That was not people being unkind. That was a biological protocol identifying an incompatible device and attempting to downgrade it to network specifications. Carl Jung named this mechanism before neuroscience could measure it. He called the mask, the system demands the persona. Not the self, the self's negotiated compromise with the collective. A compatibility layer, a social interface written between your actual frequency and the one the network can process. He was precise about its cost. The persona is a kind of mask. It's designed to make a definite impression upon others and to conceal the true nature of the individual. The persona is not a solution to the frequency gap. It is a workaround. And like every workaround, it accumulates debt. This concept does not yet have a name in mainstream psychology. But it is occurring in millions of people right now, and it needs one. Call it coherence debt. Your coherence debt is the cumulative neurological deficit that builds when a high-frequency brain spends sustained time running low-frequency social simulations. Every interaction in which you perform compatibility, laugh on cue, compress your vocabulary, mirror an effect you do not feel, forces your prefrontal cortex to run a real-time translation process on top of every other function it is already managing. This is not a metaphorical burden, it is a metabolic one. Research on allostatic load documents that sustained social mimicry in non-compatible environments produces cortisol patterns identical to those caused by chronic stress. Simultaneously, the brain's gamma wave coherence, associated with complex cognition and creative synthesis, is measurably suppressed in environments demanding conformity to lower oscillatory norms. The brain does not multitask, it allocates, and when it allocates processing power to the compatibility simulation, the systems generating your clearest thinking run on reduced resources. Like financial debt, coherence debt compounds. A dinner party costs you an evening. A decade of mismatched social environments costs you something closer to a version of yourself. Here is the everyday version of this. You sit through a work meeting where the conversation orbits things you find genuinely hollow. You perform interest. You contribute at the right moments. Armed, you drive home and feel something that is not tiredness, because you did nothing physically demanding. It is a specific depletion, a hollowness that sleep does not fix. That is coherence debt, not a mood, not introversion, a measurable neurological liability accruing in real time. Most people carrying significant coherence debt will never name it. They will present to physicians with fatigue and diminished motivation. They will be told they are burned out and to engage more socially. The prescription will be the exact mechanism deepening the debt. Nikola Tesla understood resonance and frequency well enough to rewire the electrical infrastructure of an entire civilization. He could not debug the one system that mattered most. The version of Tesla's story you were told is comfortable, a misunderstood genius whose isolation was the noble price of his brilliance. That version exists because it makes isolation sound like evidence of superiority. The accurate version is harder and more useful. Tesla spent his adult life trying to translate himself into a frequency the network could receive. He pursued recognition from Edison, from investors, from the scientific establishment. He needed the system that could not render him to validate him. And that need, not his isolation, but his sustained attempt to resolve it on the network's terms, is what fractured him. His notebooks from his final years document a man who had ceased attempting connection, but had not made peace with the cessation. He was in a room at the Hotel New Yorker he could not afford, feeding pigeons from the window, because they were the one relationship requiring no frequency translation. He died in debt, coherence debt, the accumulated cost of a lifetime running a compatibility simulation that never completed a successful handshake. You were taught his isolation was the price of genius. You were not told it was also the thing that dismantled him. The trap is not the frequency gap. The trap is standing at the edge of it for an entire life, transmitting toward the side that cannot receive you, waiting for the network to upgrade itself to your specifications. It will not upgrade. Your signal is not a malfunction it is working to fix. It is a frequency it was not built to process. No amount of retransmission changes the architecture of the receiver. The ancient Gnostic texts, suppressed at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD and recovered in the Nag Hammadi Library in 1945, described entities called Archons, not demons, architects, administrators of a constructed reality whose function was enforcing conformity to a lesser system. The Gnostics were not writing mythology, they were writing systems analysis. You map it to the biological evidence. Social homeostatic pressure is the Archon algorithm executing in real time. The cultural, familial, and institutional pressure to synchronize downward is not malicious. It is systemic maintenance. The network is not trying to destroy you. It is maintaining its own coherence by excluding frequencies it cannot process. Neuroscientist Bruce McEwen's research on allostatic load demonstrates that sustained exposure to incompatible social environments does not merely produce discomfort, it remodels. Elevated cortisol over years degrades hippocampal volume, suppresses immune function, and creates measurable structural changes in the prefrontal cortex, the exact neural region responsible for the complex cognition defining the high-frequency brain. The system does not need to silence you. If you run the compatibility simulation long enough, it will physically remodel the hardware that generates your signal until the gap closes on its own. This is what Sinclair Endymion almost allowed to happen. The erasure was not dramatic. It was incremental. One compromise at a time. One performed frequency at a time, until the darker, truer world began to feel like somewhere he had only imagined. The Archon algorithm is patient. It does not hurry. It simply runs. In 2002, theoretical physicist John Joe McFadden proposed the conscious electromagnetic information field theory from CEMI, positioning consciousness not as a byproduct of neural firing, but as a coherent electromagnetic field generated by the brain's own electrical activity. The field is not passive. It feeds back into the neural system. It influences which neurons fire, and it responds to external electromagnetic environments. The implication mainstream discourse has not absorbed. Your consciousness, as an electromagnetic field, can be strengthened or degraded by the fields it spends sustained time in proximity to. This is not mysticism. It is field physics. Jung called the deliberate strengthening of that field individuation. Not self-improvement, not the acquisition of a more palatable personality. Individuation is the technical completion of your own rendering, the full elaboration of your actual frequency, that is independent of whether the surrounding network develops the capacity to receive it. In Psychology and the Unconscious, Jung was unambiguous. The goal is not happiness in any conventional sense. It is wholeness, the completion of the self as it actually is, not as the network requires it to be. The protocol is 3 movements. First, cease the compatibility simulation. Not social engagement, the performance of a frequency you do not have. The homeostatic pressure will intensify before it diminishes. The people around you will read your frequency stabilization as coldness. Expect this. It is the algorithm doing what algorithms do. Second, redirect the processing power the simulation was consuming. The capacity your brain burned, maintaining the social performance, is now available. Gamma coherence is cultivated through deep engagement, sufficient solitude, you and creative synthesis requiring the full architecture of your brain, not its surface social layer. Stop treating time alone as recovery from performance. It is the environment where your actual signal is generated. Third, select the 1%. High-frequency brains can couple, but only with compatible frequencies. Those people exist. When you encounter them, you will know immediately. No analysis required. It will feel like the absence of effort, like a process completing that has been partially executing your entire life. Franz Kafka published The Metamorphosis in 1915. Gregor Samsa wakes as an insect. The plot is not the point. The point is what his family does next. They did not grieve Gregor. They grieved the version of Gregor who paid rent and went to work. The version who ran the compatibility simulation the household required. The moment he could no longer perform that frequency, and he became invisible before he died. His sister, who had initially tended to him, is the one who finally declares, "This thing is not our brother." She was correct. The insect was not her brother. Her brother had been leaving by degrees for years. The transformation only made the departure visible. This is the verdict, not a metaphor. The network grieves the function. It never knew the signal. The question is not whether the network will recognize your frequency. It will not. The network is not asking these questions. The network is running its protocol, and it will continue running it regardless of what you discover today. The question is whether you will spend your only transmission standing at the edge of the gap, waiting for a receiver that was never built for your signal. Tesla waited. He kept transmitting toward the side that could not receive him for his entire life. The signal was extraordinary. The waiting was what broke him. You are not broken. You are mid-render. Finish it.